We as a city will not tolerate this type of action. Realistic expectations that don't flood our center. Please, please, please practice kindness, be patient, and try to show empathy for one another. One thing I know for sure is that we can only come out better.
我们今天连线的是 Alameda County 的 Fremont 市的市长 Lily Mei， 同时与我们在线的还有一位 Fremont 本地的居民，也是一位社区热心人士 Charles 刘，也是我们开放麦节目嘉宾之一。
It's my pleasure today to join all of you from my City Hall office and to have an opportunity to meet and talk to the open mic audience.
It seems that there are very few good numbers of the COVID-19 infected persons in Fremont. Why is it so hard to get an accurate count?
And so as Fremont resides in Alameda County, we're working with the Alameda County Public Health Department. And at this time, they have only provided the information to us by the county level. They have not disaggregated that information down to the city specific information. And part of what they're citing is because the cases have been lower in their opinion. So they don't want to disaggregate it. Some people might ask also, why does Berkeley have that information? But Berkeley has their own independent public health department separate from the county.
Oh, what about City of San Francisco? They seem to have a lot more information as well.
Well, Fremont is a large city. We are in the top 100 in the United States. But if you were to compare us to a city like San Jose being number 10 in the nation, San Francisco being number 15 in the whole nation, or even Oakland being number 45 in the nation, they are running a different form of government in the sense that they have a strong mayor or a mayor-led form of government. And in particular, San Francisco is very different because they are both a city and county. And so therefore, Mayor Breed has the authority for two very large overlapping districts, both the city as well as the county. Whereas Fremont is a large city, but we report into Alameda County, and we work with them.
One of the reasons that I heard that Fremont doesn't have very good number on the number of COVID-19 victims is that the hospitals in Fremont are really not allowed to share their test results with the city. Is that correct or no?
The hospitals have, much like any other medical institution, they have privacy concerns with the residents and the people that are under their care. And so if the county doesn't authorize or release that information to us, because they are collecting it, we would not be able to share that. And they would not be able to provide that information to us individually either.
Now, for the Hayward City-style testing center that we're going to set up in Fremont,
Charles, could you elaborate more about what this Hayward-style testing station is?
Okay, so the city of Hayward seem to have announced that they tested maybe a couple through 200 or so residents, and then over 26 to 27% of the people who got tested turned out to be positive. And so I think Fremont, I heard that Fremont is trying to set some that's similar to Hayward's testing center. And Mayor Lily, can you elaborate on that? I think you might have more information on that.
So we have been anxiously following, like every other city, look how Hayward has been standing a testing center. They had a partnership with the lab as well as a facility that they were able to set up the tents. We actually do have some people there from our own Fremont fire team helping and volunteering right now to help stand this station, as well as to understand the processes. Part of it is being that it just opened this past week. They are adjusting their criteria as they're seeing the patients. Initially, I think the main focus, and I think it's true for all of us, is looking at our first responders, our public safety, our fire, our police, our healthcare workers, and the frontline essential workers that are really important. They originally had it more restrictive in terms of having to have certain symptoms, symptomatic symptoms such as fever, travel or exposure, known exposure. And then at one point they opened it a little broader and they ended up being flooded with a couple hundred people wanting to be tested. We haven't decided as to how we would set our criteria. I would say that it's probably important to be a little cautious to make sure that we, with our limited tests as they are standing right now, focus first on addressing our city's core systems. Because I look at New York City and how right now they are being impacted drastically on their public safety as well as their healthcare workers. And so for us to be able to provide the care that's needed in these critical times, we need to make sure these essential workers are healthy and are able to not expose themselves to others out there if they themselves are not healthy. So that's what my first primary care. And then beyond that, then we also want to address those who are showing symptoms and are known exposed to people who have been diagnosed with COVID-19. These are things that we're slowly trying to figure out the definitions of what we want to be able to see, the methodology. But I think it's important that we are cautious. That doesn't require you to have a doctor's note from Hayward, at least right now. But they also are trying to focus. And actually, I was just reading yesterday that they've actually tightened their scope a little bit to better control the crowds. Because what we don't want also is that for people to come and get frustrated or to assume that, you know, everybody's going to be tested. At minimum, I would say that for myself, and I'm speaking of an individual, not as the entire council, but I think because of the limited resources, we would have to have people have symptoms of the disease, and not just that you yourself have symptoms. We would have healthcare workers also that would be there volunteering to help us screen the patients as they come through, so that we can set realistic expectations that don't flood our center as well as don't upset the public, because the expectations need to be managed as well as communicated clearly.
Mayor, I read some meeting minutes. How exactly the city will enforce this anti-hoarding behavior?
Some of the biggest concerns we are seeing pertain to the PPE, the personal protection equipment, things like gloves, things like hand sanitizers, gowns, face masks, are all things that are essential for them to be able to operate and provide the services that are available. And one of the challenges we had initially, much like every other city, is some people thought the need to go out and hoard all this product. And in particular right now, there's a great deal of concern on anti-hoarding and anti-price gouging. It wouldn't come to me personally as the mayor to be able to address. I know some people have called me and said, you know, so-and-so is charging so much, can you do something about it? And there's resources that we provided online as well as through the district attorney's office where they're going to be following up on these cases, because it is egregious, I think, to say that if we're in a crisis that people are trying to profit or scam or take advantage of this vulnerability of people and the high pricing that we're seeing sometimes. We recognize there's supply and demand aspect, but there's also a basic humanity and need for people to have that. And it's a shame that some people don't see that as the balance. And so that both the federal level, state, and local and our counties are going to be pursuing these cases, and will be following up on those themselves for prosecution if necessary.
Santa Clara Convention Center is being converted into a temporary hospital with a lot of hospital beds.
Yes.
Now, I'm hoping that Fremont will never get to the point where we'll need all these access hospital beds in the future. But if the need does come up, is there a venue or a building or facility that will accommodate that?
We've activated our emergency operations center, and that has been activated since the beginning of March. And our fire and our leadership team, as well as our police, are having regular calls on a daily basis to update and to talk about what is going on in our city so that we can be prepared. As far as locations, we have thought about this, and we are working with our local agencies, with local hotels, with the school district and other people to look at how we would address that. But since we don't have anything finalized at this point, I would feel uncomfortable in citing any locations, but we are in the process and have been keeping that in mind, and certainly hope that we do not, that's why we want people to shelter in place, that we do not have to get to the point where we need to build additional beds. We have secured and put in for opportunities that the county has for additional trailers and other locations in case we need to utilize those in case of an emergency. But at this time, we have not had to activate it, and we hope to stay that way. And that's why we need the cooperation and support of all of our public members.
If you look at Mission Peak, it's teeming with people. And some people are saying, well, there are too many. And some people are staying very, very close. And can you actually close Mission Peak, this park, or how much power do you have over different parks?
Fremont has jurisdiction over our own city parks. And right now, thus far, we have been keeping them open, but we've been careful. We've closed down our bathrooms. We've also tried closure of some of the playground equipment. So therefore, people are not just sitting there and hanging out on the equipment. For the East Bay Regional Parks, and in particular Mission Peak, East Bay Regional Parks did make a decision to close some of their locations, but fortunately or unfortunately, right now, Mission Peak is not one of them. We are trying to flatten the curve. We are trying to enforce and strengthen this awareness to people that while you think everything is running as normal, we don't know because of the incubation period of the illness. One of the things that's a challenge is not everyone has a big house. Some people are in apartments, and especially when we're in these situations where now the students are home, the parents are working from home, is a challenge, and we have to always continually evaluate is if people are being smart and sensible on how they practice the social distancing. If things were to suddenly get dramatically worse and health become more of a concern, we might have to revisit and look at what other options would have to be instituted to enforce it.
President Trump has talked about using the, emergency, wartime powers.
It's called Defense Production Act.
That's right. To force the manufacturers to make ventilators. And I heard that Tesla is one of the companies that will be required to make ventilators. And is the Fremont Tesla factory going to be converted into a ventilator manufacturing facility?
Yeah, let me add a little bit context here. I think it's a great question because President Trump just ordered General Motors and
Yes.
Ford, right?
Yes.
It almost like order, you gotta do this. But how about Tesla? Do you think the administration or on any level, state or city level, anybody can ask them to do that?
The latest that I've seen is that they're creating the ventilators over in their New York factory. And part of it is if you look at the sheer magnitude of the issue as it stands right now for COVID virus, it has been greatly enhanced or magnified in the New York City region. And so that's why they're considering that area first. There have been discussions at points where they've talked about possibly doing things in Fremont. And certainly with our factory, and because the fact that you're manufacturing cars and you have HVAC expertise, there are efforts also in terms of, even if you're not manufacturing them, repairing, refurbishing, and repackaging those to be utilized by people in hospitals in case of needs. Most people don't know that one of our largest industries is actually biomedical. And so we have a lot of those manufacturers here, both for hardware, equipment, as well as for some of the chemicals. And so therefore, we're working with all of our manufacturers to see what are essential services, what's critical, how can we help? And I think that's why it's wonderful that we have to have this strong partnership to evaluate each situation case by case basis.
Our president's comments on Chinese virus using that term did not help. And obviously he's reversed course on that and said the Asian Americans are not at fault for that. And that was a good step. Mayor, as a city official, do you have anything to say about the hate crimes and our guard against that?
Well, one of the things that's really important for right now is that people, because they're homebound or sheltering in place, as well as the anxiety of the unknown with how this disease is going to transform or react, is causing people to have heightened sensitivities and lack of patience sometimes with one another. So now more than ever, we need people to stay calm and to be respectful. And because we've heard about these incidences, and to be really frank and candid, I myself have experienced some of this in some of my travels and as a child myself in the community. I'm very sensitive to this and wanted to make sure that our council, which is a total agreement and support of this, we stood up and working with our police, more awareness for hate crime reporting, as well as that we as a city will not tolerate this type of action.
People are, afraid, a lot of us, and they're the future is indeed uncertain. What do you say to the people?
Certainly at this time, we are facing something that we have not faced before. It's an unknown challenge. But what I do know is that it's important for us to support one another and to come together more now than ever, whether it's supporting and respecting and honoring our first responders, our custodians, our hospital workers, those who are helping us with the grocery stores and the pharmacies. All these people that are in essential services are putting themselves and their families sometimes on the back burner to spend more time focusing on these jobs or putting themselves sometimes at risk of being exposed to these diseases. So therefore, what we can do as a community is to support one another, to support them with donations, with understanding, with empathy. I'll tell you for myself that I really appreciate those who have reached out and shared their good wishes to myself and other leaders. It's not always something people know. I can give a perfect example for myself. On Friday, I got up at 4:30 in the morning to do 2 radio interviews, one at 5:30 and one at 6:30. And, everybody's doing their best at this time. I'm a mom. I have parents who are elderly, who are experiencing other healthcare and mental issues that we're trying to help serve. And so please, please, please practice kindness, be patient, and try to show empathy for one another. Because the one thing I know for sure is that we can only come out better. When I was on the East Coast for 9/11 and for some of these other horrific and challenging times, is that I'm constantly amazed by while there's those who are frustrated and expressing their anger or frustrations on others, there are those who will rise above all expectations and demonstrate what it means to be humankind.
So where did you get your strength? This period of time is something you never have ever experienced, right?
On a very personal note, I have to say that everyone looks for their own source of strength. And for myself, I personally am Christian, and that my faith helps me carry myself through these tough times. I feel so blessed that, people will send me things like hymns to look at it as well, or that they will send me a note saying that they're praying for me. And that type of comfort brings more joy to me and really repowers and energizes me in the times when I really need it. There are times when you're seeing such hate and negativity coming at myself and others that are sometimes misplaced and misguided in terms of they're just upset and angry. But when I am able to see that, when 2 or 3 are gathered in his name and are able to lift up their voice, or one of my personal favorites is I can do all things through him who gives me strength. And that challenges and revitalizes me. I've always told people, and some people don't know, that when I was younger and for many, many years, up until about 3 years ago, I've always taught Sunday school. And I always tell students that, many things that you're given, whether it's your talents or skills, are God's gifts to you. But what you do with them and what you make of them is your gift back to God. And that's what I hope to be able to, on a personal note, empower and to share with others, is that everybody makes a difference. Every single person is important. I love the fact that one of my former colleagues, Ivy Wu, says, no one can out you. You are your own best version of you. And that's what makes us all special. And because those are our traits, and humanity is such, that we hopefully can share those to help out one another.
Thank you. Amen.
It's so good to hear that.